Ahoy, sailors and starnauts. Welcome to a review of Shogun on FX, a suitably epic series for which we have been in short supply lately. So I thought we would chit-chat about it on a Wednesday afternoon, and we'll probably keep reviewing it. And we have a special guest. I am, of course, Captain Garrett of the Swords and Starships channel. You are watching a special review of Shogun, episodes 4 to 6. There will be spoilers, so make sure you've seen it. And we are live on YouTube, Rumble, and X, formerly Twitter. So hit that like and subscribe, and we will get rolling. Let's bring in our special guest. The man, the myth, the legend, Redoubt Productions. How are you, sir?
Well, just got done watching episode 6. I'm doing good. Little drowsy. I don't know why. This whole week I've just been feeling drowsy every day. I think it's the seasons changing. Hopefully that means warmer days are near. But it probably just means more crappier weather's near. So doing good, minus that fact.
Yes, I hear you. It's we had some spring for a while, and then spring resumed with winter, and
yes.
Where I'm at, which is
no, it's been about the same here.
You know, it's funny. I watched this show Shogun, and I'm like, I have got to go to Japan. I am becoming Japan obsessed, which is, you know, I guess that for nerd culture, that's being a late bloomer, but
Well, they call it what? They call it Anglophile when you're all about everything about English culture. What's it about Japan? Is it
Japan? I guess it's a Japanophile.
I guess.
I don't know.
I know somebody in the comments like, oh, well, we call that a weeb, dear Redoubt. Well, can we think of something with a little more gravitas, a little less demeaning?
Well, all I know is the countryside is beautiful in this show. It's like spectacular to look at. And also, even though it's animated, obviously it's an idealized portrayal. It's like Blue Eye Samurai is still pulling from the natural beauty of Japan. And it's just something I want to see. So, well, let's jump into it. I mean, this is sort of impromptu, unexpected. So we'll I kind of treat this as sort of more of a recording than a live session. But hey, if anyone shows up, you're welcome to join in. So in any case, let's jump into the review. So when last we met, we'd seen episodes 1 through 3. And the last 3 episodes that we're focusing on today are Chapter 4, The Eightfold Fence, Chapter 5, Broken to the Fist, and the most recent episode, Chapter 6, Ladies of the Willow World, which was a very cool episode, I have to say. And I love this concept of the eightfold fence. So why don't we start there? So what are your thoughts on the most recent episodes?
I've enjoyed them. I am still going to keep following the series. I will be honest, it gets a little difficult for me to go too deep into the philosophy, just because we're being introduced to so many different philosophical ideas, different constructs. And I feel like almost every episode of these previous 3 have given us like a different thing to chew on, a different way of how the people of Japan are going about their way of life, their rationale of all the things that they do, why they act the way they do. And they all kind of are tied in back to the same thing. But I will be honest, again, you're trying to learn all of this stuff, complex constructs through a foreign language. So after a while, it could kind of go over my head by the third time around.
I did love the concept of the eightfold fence.
No, it's great.
That was brilliant. I mean, I get what you're saying. It's like but I think that's kind of what I love about the series. There's so much to sink your teeth into. There's so much depth. There's I think what's fascinating about Japanese culture as opposed to Western culture, and I suppose you could say it's almost Eastern culture versus Western culture, is a kind of sense of presence and acceptance of what is. You know, Eckhart Tolle calls it the isness of the moment, and that's which is a kind of aspect of philosophy I've been delving into a lot, because I think Western civilization came from a more it descends from a culture that was much more obsessed with doing things, producing things, achieving things. I don't mean to say that there's not an achievement culture in Eastern culture. I'm just saying that the mindset is like always planning for the future, always reviewing what happened yesterday. Whereas what seems to be a slightly more of the focus in this culture is accepting what is, right? There's a great scene in which you know, I love how John Blackthorne starts to really chafe at the Japanese way of doing things, and he's like I want to go home. He's like, I wish to return to
Yeah.
England. I'm tired. I'm tired of your culture. I'm tired of your being trapped in your endless rituals and all that. And I forget if he says something else, but it kind of sets it up. But Mariko kind of pushes back, and she says, we live and we die. There's really nothing else there's nothing else we can do but accept it, right? Because she's essentially arguing back when he's saying, you're trapped in your rituals and you treat life cheaply, and she's arguing back that like we live in a fragile existence. There's a lot of other great lines concerning life or death, but I think what's really an interesting, like, natural aspect of why that's their culture is the earthquakes.
Yes,
Japan is situated on the Ring
which
of
we get
Fire.
in episode 5, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I know we're kind of jumping around a bit, but that's such an important point. Is like in one of the first 3 episodes, or I think it might have been the 4th episode. Mariko explains why their houses are built the way they are. They're built of wood and paper because they can be put up as easily as they can be knocked down because Japan suffers from earthquakes. And I guess that's not something that happens in the British Isles because John Blackthorne is completely shocked.
Yeah,
It's
he's
like,
like, I have no idea
what
what
was
you're
that?
talking about. What do you mean a little one?
Yeah, so all of this contributing to this kind of mindset of like life and death are out of our control, which is part of the influence of their culture, and therefore we must accept what is, and then that leads to the philosophical perspective of the eightfold fence in episode 4. And she introduces that to John because he is struggling. He's struggling he feels trapped, he's a prisoner even though he's been given this great honor of being what's the word for it? Hatamoto.
Hatamoto essentially is a samurai. Essentially, he's
Okay.
been bestowed as samurai. Not the. I don't. I don't think he's telling the full thing yet, but he's been given all the. He's supposed to be treated as a Hamamoto. He's supposed to have a house. He's supposed to have a feet. Like he's supposed to have all this. He has the full kit,
Yeah.
and he just doesn't quite understand the significance of it. He knows it's important, but he doesn't get quite how important of a title he's just ascended to so rapidly.
Okay. Which that is this sort of it's fascinating to look at Lord Toranaga's reasoning for making him Hadamato, because he's basically, on the one hand, he's sort of placating John because John is essentially a prisoner. He
Yeah.
can't really leave. And he is also a chess piece on the board in this game of chess that Toranaga is playing with the 5 regions. What's interesting about it, by the way, spoilers for Shogun, spoilers in case I didn't say it, but it's a way of sort of making him comfortable and making him feel like he's in this venerated position, allowing him to save face, right? Because now he has a reason to feel proud, right? Which is very important in their culture. At the same time, I think it's a way of sort of forcing everyone to accept John Blackthorne, because the biggest problem Toranaga has is that Blackthorne is a barbarian in the eyes of all of his men. He is this savage. He is an outsider, and they all are everyone's just looking for a reason to figuratively, if not literally, piss on John Blackthorne. And Toranaga can't have that because Toranaga needs him to get some things done. And so this is a way of him kind of forcing the situation and saying like, oh, he's Hadamato now, which means quit with all the belly aching. Like,
Oh, and just to interject, now take this a pinch of salt. This is from the Wikipedia, so always take that with a pinch of salt. In the English language, Hatamoto would be, so from Japanese to English, Hatamoto means bannerman. Essentially, it is a high-ranking samurai that was seen during the Tokugawa shogunate, which Toranaga is basically the composite character for the Tokugawa shogunate. Basically, you're a samurai. You are going to rally around the flag of this particular lord.
right, Hatamoto. Okay, that makes sense. So he's a bannerman, basically. All right, cool. Well, okay, so which is it's an intriguing move on Toranaga's part because he's I do like how there's always like layers to the game. I talk about this a lot. How like one of the problems with a lot of modern shows is that they don't tell complex stories because they don't have complex characters with multiple layers and depth. And what's fascinating is it's like these are characters with 5 layers. These are characters with layers on top of layers. And so everything they're doing, I like the aspect. This is pretty typical of almost any feudal court intrigue, though, when you really get down to it. But there's this game theory of like, oh, I'm bowing to you and I'm giving you all these honors, and you know that it's bullshit, and I'm kissing your ass because I have to. And I know that you know that it's bullshit and I'm kissing your ass and I have to, but I appreciate, but I also know that you know that I know that we all appreciate you pretending to accept this gesture so we can have peace. It's like there's this multi-layer, like, social game that they're playing. It's very cool. So, and it makes it a really fun show to watch. The problem I have is that I wanted more samurai warfare. I wanted more action from this show. I feel like I'm not getting as much of that as I wanted. What do you think?
Well, I will say we've gotten more violence than the 1980 miniseries offered us. So take that as you will. If you think this is small on the violence, on the action, the 1980 is predominantly talking. It is all talking. And I'm pretty confident the original novel is pretty similar. It's more on the intrigue rather than the actual violence, seeing the actual fight and ensue. That being said, we have had snippets of it. The end of episode 4, if you've been lusting for blood, which first I'll question your sanity, but next I understand. This is a show involving samurai. We get it in droves at the end of episode 4 because Lord Toranaga's son decides to take matters into his own hands with dealing with one of Ishido's representatives coming to visit the village, and they're worried that let's just say Toranaga's secret weapon will be unveiled to Ishido and the whole plan will fall apart. And Yabashige got one plan to handle it. Well, Toranaga's son decides to take matters into his own hands, and we get lovely violence.
Yet there's these great stalemates that keep happening in the show because basically, Toranaga has fled Osaka, where the other 4 regents have wanted to have him executed, and he's building an army. He's building up his power base so that he can, I guess, ultimately challenge the leadership in Osaka. And what happens is Lord Ishido sends a messenger, Josen, to go and bring him back. And this is a very delicate situation because Yubashige, who is the vassal of Lord Toranaga, he's in a pickle because on the one hand, he feels like if he sides with Toranaga, he's on the losing side. But if he sides with, Lord, is it Ishido? That's his name, right?
Ishido, yes.
Yeah. If he sides with Ishido, Toranaga's going to have him beheaded. So he's really in quite the bind. And so he's trying to stall and buy his time. And then Toranaga's son decides to just wipe out Josen and all the messengers with a very bloody artillery barrage that just tears them
that
apart.
Happened.
Dude, it is grisly.
Yeah,
it is a grisly
yes.
sight.
It's like, oh my God, accurate artillery depiction on display.
It is. It really does show like how Napoleon was, being so brilliant with his use of artillery, was able to just cut in half armies and then just wipe them out. It's pretty amazing, and I love how John Blackthorne is finding this way of like being an expert, even though he's not. He knows he's not an expert in infantry. He is an expert in
That
naval
was pretty good.
artillery.
That was,
People kind of.
a smooth save on his part.
It
It's like,
was.
I
like
look smart. I'm not lying or anything.
He's playing to his strengths, and that was pretty brilliant. And I will say that like one of the really interesting factors in this show is actually I want to make sure that okay, is my stream up on YouTube? Okay, good, it's on YouTube. I was thinking for whatever reason I wasn't getting the data on YouTube. All right, cool. So anyway, people often forget that like back in this time, a naval vessel, an old tall wooden ship with rows of cannons, was one of the most powerful floating weapons you could find, because it was basically rows of artillery pieces lined up, and it could bombard cities. It could deliver a lot of damage. It could throw, I think the HMS Victory, which is like what, 4 or 5 decks. The British ship of the line.
It's ridiculous.
I think she could throw something like half a ton of metal in every barrage, if I'm not mistaken. Half a ton of metal in like a minute, and over and over again. So naval artillery was a big deal back then. So the fact that John Blackthorne sort of swerves into his expertise, and the English were historically, they tended to be the masters of naval artillery.
For the record, they're not quite there yet historically this time period. At this time, basically, as the show rightfully sets up, the Spanish and the Portuguese were the masters of the world at this point, at least how Europe perceived the world. But Britain and France, they're getting there. They're returning to form, should we say, after bludgeoning each other for centuries.
That sounds exactly right. This is earlier, before they were quite the naval superpower that they were in more like the 18th and 19th centuries. When was the Spanish Armada?
Oh, that was
1588.
The Spanish, okay. Yeah, that was gonna say that was in the 1500s. Battle of the Spanish,
yeah. So this is shortly after those events. So yeah, England is after definitely on the rise.
Yeah. Yeah, after that happened, it was a wonderful foray across the English Channel. Nothing went wrong. What are you talking about?
Yeah, didn't go well for the Spanish back then. You know what's cool about this show, though, is it's actually very similar to House of the Dragon, in that House of the Dragon was not as focused on the actual battles. There are a couple of battles, there are a couple of moments of violence, but they're actually very similar, because in House of the Dragon, like in Shogun, when there's violence, it's bloody, it's shocking, it comes quickly. It's very much like what would happen, if you're just in that situation. There's no dragons in Shogun, unfortunately, but there's not a lot of like pitched battles. There's not a lot of long extended fight sequences. If you're looking for that, Blue Eye Samurai is definitely much better. If you're looking for just like samurai warfare or samurai duels, this show is all about the chess game. It is all about moving the pieces on the board, and that element of it is absolutely brilliant, and I love watching it.
Well, I would say like doing a battle sequence, properly depicting the full machinations that go into a battle, regardless of what time period, is very tricky to depict. It's one thing to try to describe it on paper that a general audience can grasp what's happening. Then you're trying to apply that to the visual sense. You'd think it'd be easier trying to do in visuals, but you can't just simply have people mindlessly throwing swords at each other or mindlessly shooting guns, or else you end up with a very big mess. And you're like, what does this mean? Oh, pew stuff. To be able to tie in all levels of the leadership that's going into it, the thought process of deploying the troops, and also trying to get in the shock and awe on what's happening on the ground is very difficult, which is why when we typically talk about historical battles being depicted in film, I'd say probably the most success comes from the personal perspective. Usually we're in the shoes of one individual, because then you can just depict the full chaos that's ensuing around them. You don't necessarily have to fully think about the machinations above. You very rarely get to see, though, all echelons of it depicted from top to bottom, a battle in operation. You end up with an example to be the I guess you want to call it the Ted Turner Civil War duology, Gettysburg, which is good, Gods and Generals, which is, we'll talk about that another day, where it's all about the leaders. And Gettysburg does a pretty good job getting some of the battle sequences across, the movements, the importance. But for the most part, it's either you listen to the officers talking before the battle, you get some non-connected visuals of the battle, and then you go back to the drawing board. It's kind of hard to connect from what they were planning to what's actually happening. And Gods and Generals is just a complete mess. There's no thought process put into the battles in those. If you're a historian, you know what's happening, but you have all these great speeches, and it's like, great. What does that have to do with the slaughter pen at Fredericksburg? Please explain to me. So to wrap my point up, to depict a battle and have the thought process of the leaders and then them demonstrating it on screen is very difficult to do. So if Shogun does try to do it, I would be happy if they succeed. I don't know if they're even going to go through the effort of demonstrating it, because the original miniseries, we don't get a major battle. We don't have it depicted, at least. It happens. There are battles happening, but it's more about the thought process. But as I mentioned earlier, the remake so far has shown more violence and more action pieces than a first miniseries. So I'm partly optimistic.
Yeah. Here's great points. All here's what I see with battle sequences in movies, shows that are done really well. You have to look at it as a story in and of itself, and it can be done very well. And there's a lot of examples that are coming to mind. But like, just to share. So this, of course, is the Blake Snyder Save the Cat beat sheet for storytelling, and this is for a film, right? These are the beats of a film narrative. But I actually look at it as in a miniature sense. This is also the story of a battle, right? Because maybe not exactly every beat, like exactly theme stated, but actually I would argue theme stated. Actually, no. I think I could give you an example of this done very well in science fiction. So Battlestar Galactica has the reimagined TV series has my favorite episode of the series is called Hand of God. And it's about middle of season 1, and it's an episode in which the fleet is running out of fuel. They've got literally days of fuel left. If they run out, they're screwed. They're done for. Okay, and they just happen to get lucky and find a planet that's got just a motherload of Tilium, which is the fuel for the ships. And I'm choosing this example because it's not only great for like medieval warfare, like in Shogun, but it's great for like science fiction battles, which are often done very poorly. Kurtzman track, which does terrible.
Lens flares, cover up the crap.
Kurtzman Trek does terrible space battles, but this episode of Battlestar Galactica does a brilliant battle. And so it starts with kind of, if you're just looking at the battle, it starts with showing what won't work, right? The opening image is basically all the officers explaining that the Cylons are camped. That's right, I forgot to mention. They find the Tilium, but then they find out it's like a hornet's nest of Cylons who are mining it, right? And they're like, well, shit, Admiral, I guess we're out of luck. We can't get it. And then Admiral Adama goes against the grain and says, you know what, sometimes when a bully is chasing you in the schoolyard, you just got to turn around and punch him in the nose and show him who's boss. We're going to take that Tilium, right? And that, you could say that's actually your theme stated right there, is Adama saying, sometimes you got to punch the bully in the nose, and we just got to play for all the marbles. Then you get the setup, which is he goes to Kara Thrace, who is kind of the unconventional thinker, and he says, come up with a plan that can beat them. Then you have Catalyst. I'd have to think about that, but that's basically what kind of accelerates the events. And then there's debate. This plan won't work. Will it work? Won't it? And so I could go through that whole battle and give you every single moment that fits this, but definitely what you have, okay, the battle, I would say, break into two is when the battle starts. They launch their attack, and we have just had it explained to us what the plan is, right? Now we get the promise of the premise. We see the ships flying at each other. We see them moving. They show this at all levels, because you have Lee Adama is in the cockpit, so he's the guy in the thick of it. Then you have Kara Thrace and Admiral Adama and President Roslin are all in the CIC on Galactica, watching them move the pieces on the board, literally, so that we as the audience know what's happening. Meanwhile, Roslin represents us, because she's not a military expert, so they're explaining to her what's happening, which is building the tension, because we're also getting an explanation of what happens if we lose. Then we get to the midpoint of the battle, which is now the Cylons predictably are coming after us. Then we get bad guys close in, which is great, because they had this whole trap set where they were going to bait the Cylons into chasing Galactica, and then Lee Adama would sneak in the back door. But they don't. But they sniff this out, and they ignore the Galactica, and they instead go after the fighters, and they're about to annihilate all the Vipers that are supposed to actually pull off the mission. So that would be bad guys close in. Now we have a kind of all is lost moment in the battle where Roslin is like, well, what are we going to do if they've taken the bait, and if they've not taken the bait and they're about to wipe out all of our Vipers, then that means all of the human race is about to be annihilated and we lost, right? But then we have the break into 3 where it's revealed something we did not know, which is that Kara had come up with a brilliant idea of expecting the Cylons to sniff it out. And we then get the reveal that one of the civilian ships that the Cylons are now ignoring had Lee Adama and all of his Vipers hidden inside. And now we get into the final denouement of the battle. So it's a brilliant episode, right? But at every level, we understand what's happening. Other great examples of this are Gladiator, when Maximus fights that brilliant battle in the Colosseum where he's part of the slaves and he's supposed to lose. There's a lot of great episodes where we get planning. So I think it can be done, and I think that's probably what we're going to get with Shogun in the next episodes. And Stormcrow is in the chat. Says, well, 2 of my favorite nerds in the same video. Garrett, I hope one day I'll have the honor of being in this kind of stream. Well, you want to come on, Stormcrow? You want to join us? I'll send you a link. Reach out in the Discord, my friend. You can just chat with us about Shogun. If you've seen it, we're talking Shogun and other stuff. So anyway, I know that was a long explanation, but I think that's the way to get at battles, right? Is you tell a story, you set up the stakes, you have the theme stated, which is in this case what's at stake, right? Why are the heroes taking this risk? And then you get to the debate, which is this going to work? Is this worth it? What happens if we lose? All of that. And then you have to have the bad guys close in, which is there's a moment when things are going wrong in the battle. The Patriot, actually. The Patriot has the final battle in the Patriot's pretty good, because there's that moment when the British have once again done what they do every single time, which is they've ground the Americans down and they've routed them and they're running away. And then you have a Dark Night of the Soul where, what was Mel Gibson's character's name? Was it Benjamin Martin? Was that his name in that movie?
It is, actually.
Yeah, Benjamin Martin. I knew it was right.
It's supposed to be. He's supposed to be inspired by Francis Mary in the Fox Swamp.
Yeah, I think that Tavington, Jason Isaacs' character, was inspired by the real Colonel Torrington, right?
It's the Bannister Tarleton.
Yeah.
Which so anyway, I sense they changed his name because they have Tavington do things that if they had happened in 1780 in real life, we still would not be allies with the United Kingdom.
I do not like that they show the British burning down a church. That's garbage. That was a Nazi war crime. British never did anything like that. Now, they did execute surrendering rebels, and there were other ugly things on both sides. And they did, and both
the costuming is great, by the way, in the Patriots. Historically, the costuming is top notch. It's a shame that it's plot,
And the British did cause the Cherry Valley Massacre, where their Native American allies, like the Mohawk, slaughtered a bunch of people, a bunch of women and children. And so that was actually part of why the Declaration of Independence was saying, like, the king has incited foreign enemies against us, like that they had hired Hessians and things. Anyway, you and I could probably talk that all day long. But my point is that there's that great moment in the battle where Benjamin Martin is watching all of the rebels flee, and there's sort of a twofold dark night of the soul there, because on the one hand, the rebellion is failing, but on the second hand, he's about to lose his only chance at getting justice for his sons. Like, this is his last shot to get justice for the lives of his sons. And if he doesn't, if this battle is lost, then he loses that forever. And so that those kind of twin motivations lead him to just, in a pretty insane way, just grab the flag. And he has that great charge. And he's like, what was his line when he's charging with the flag?
I don't know. I think it's like hold the line or something.
Something like that. I don't know. I've been way too long since I watched it. But anyway, so he charges over the hill, and then that gives us our break into 3, and then we actually get the battle. So what I'm getting at is I think that, and I think Shogun will be good at this, because Shogun has been very good at establishing like what the game is, what the reason for the fight is, what happens if we lose, what happens if we win. Like that naval battle in episode 3 was really good. Like, that was a really fantastic sequence of how like Toranaga had to approach the black ship. He had to convince the Portuguese and Spanish that he had something to offer. And then John Blackthorne basically being left for dead, but he's like, screw that, and he just forges ahead anyway. So that was all really well done. So I trust that they can do that, but I think as a writer, you always have to tell a story with a battle, and if you don't tell a story, it's just mindless action. It's just Argyle. It's just Echo. It's just MCU. It's all those. It's why we're so bored of superheroes, because superhero battles need this more than anything. Like, superhero battles have got to have that sequence of things laid out. What do you think?
The one thing I was just going to say about the artillery pieces, as great as I enjoyed a sequence, something just looks weird about the tubes. Now, initially I thought, oh, maybe these are ones that were manufactured in Japan or were brought over from China, because that was a thing that was happening for a couple centuries. There was weaponry being imported, including firearms and artillery, from China and satellite countries. I'm pretty confident those are the guns that were on Blackthorn's ship in episode 1, because I saw a clip when he's leaning over the railing in episode 1. They almost had almost like an octagonal design. I don't know what's going on with their design. I really don't.
See if I can find the.
It could just be how the lighting is, and I'm just seeing the art. Maybe there's some artistry on it that is just giving an optical illusion effect, but they just look really very peculiar for being Dutch artillery pieces of the 16th century.
That's right. Yeah, you're right. They're supposed to be Dutch artillery, because he was on a Dutch vessel. That was how he got there. I'm looking for like a picture of these cannons, but I can't find one. I am finding a picture of the aftermath, which is gnarly.
I don't think we could show that on the tube view.
There's no blood in that picture. But anyway, yeah, I don't know. I think they seemed like they were period specific. It was, this is the year 1600. They looked like long guns. They definitely looked like an older make. They're not like what you would see in the age of piracy, the golden age of piracy, or the 18th century. But I'm not as familiar with the 17th century as I am with the 18th, so like I couldn't tell you how accurate they were, but they seemed accurate to me as a viewer.
They worked. They literally worked. They chopped that they chopped that messenger party up into itty bitty pieces.
But getting back to the philosophy of the show, which I quite like, they talk about the eightfold fence, which is you have to have this part of your personality that's hidden. But it's this wall that you build within yourself, and it's where you can retreat to hide. And it comes up in episode 4, I believe, when John Blackthorne has just been made Hatamoto, or what is that word again? Yeah, Hatamoto.
Yeah, Hatamoto.
I keep second guessing myself. Hatamoto. So he's Hatamoto. He's living in this gilded cage as he sees it, and he's kind of stuck there. and he's freaking out. He's miserable. He doesn't like all their customs. There is that really hilarious thing with him aging the quail, which or is it pheasant? It's a pheasant, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we have to talk about that. I have questions about this Redoubt, but he's just kind of miserable. And Mariko, who is turning out to be just an absolutely stellar character, like she's kind of one of my series' favorite characters right now. She's pretty easy on the eyes, which doesn't hurt either. But she's a incredibly complex character, even more than you realize at the beginning. But there's that great scene where she's just teaching him how to become present and how to accept his place in like where he's at in time and space. And she gives him that great explanation of the eightfold fence. Like, there's always this place you can retreat to within yourself that is calm, that is peaceful, and then you can rejoin the battle. And so there's a lot of that in the story about how he is always restless, and this is something that sort of drives a lot of the people around him in Japan crazy. He's always like he goes walking through the garden, and they're like, "You're walking on the moss. It's disrespectful to walk on the moss." And I think that is one of the most beautiful things about Japanese culture that I love is the way that they organize their environment to create a feeling of peace, and how that there's like this idea of like a garden the rock has to be right here in the garden. A proper garden has to have this. And what's so interesting about John Blackthorne is at first he thinks this is all a bunch of malarkey. But he's so miserable, he kind of has no choice but to give their attitudes a try, because what else is he going to do but go stir crazy? And so he starts kind of creating this eightfold fence, and he forms this friendship with the gardener in what is his house, and he starts to appreciate the gardener. And then Lord Toranaga kills some pheasants and gifts one of them to his new Hatamoto, John Blackthorne. And as soon as John sees the pheasant, he gets really excited. He's like, "Oh, why, this is a fine pheasant. We have to prepare it in the English fashion." And so he hangs it up to just like mature for like several days. And he's like, and they're like, and all the Japanese are all horrified. They're like, "What are you doing? Won't it rot?" And he's like, "Oh yes, the stench will be terrible." I'm like, this can't be for real, man. And he lets it rot, and like the flies are getting at it. Now listen, I had to question this. I'm like, this is not how English people like aged pheasant.
First, if you're gonna age it, why are you gonna put it in the courtyard? Couldn't you found anywhere else on that property?
Yeah, because they quite correctly observe that it's gonna rot and fester. So I went sort of searching online, because it's like, okay, how to age a pheasant, and because I don't know like game fowl, I don't know anything about that. It's just never been part of my cultural zeitgeist. So I started looking into it, and yes, there are tried and true techniques for aging pheasant. However, you put the pheasant in a cool, like, it has to be something like below 55 degrees, and you want it to be a dry environment. So a cool, dry. Now, in modern times, people...
And being on the coast of Japan is not a dry environment for the record.
No, it's a very humid area. So it's like, you wouldn't want the pheasant just aging in a courtyard. But the thing is, the British Isles tend to be fairly damp. I am given to understand. And I would think they would know that too, that like you're not going to now he is kind of from a peasant background, but they wouldn't just let the pheasant rot, would they? Like they would age it in like a cellar or something is kind of what I was saying.
They would have a set area, a set place for all this to happen.
So whether or not that's strictly, maybe, FX actually has a pretty detailed website set up where you can do like behind the episode.
Oh yes, and I appreciate that, by the way. I've gone to it a few times. I haven't this week, but last week I did a few times. I do appreciate it.
I might just pull that up because I want to know if this is historically accurate, because I'm thinking if you literally just let a pheasant rot and just get maggot, like the flies are on it, it's maggot infested. Like, how are you going to eat that? That I just, there's something, that took me out of it because, and listen, there are
This
times
happens. This happens in a 1980 miniseries.
it does. It's a plot
Yes,
point in that. It's got to
yes,
be a plot point in the novel then
yeah.
as
It's
well.
part of the book. It's part of the
Yeah.
book. It's part of both adaptations. So I don't know if they go to this. I don't remember them going this to a degree. I remember the ramifications of it, but I don't remember actually seeing it in maggots and
Well, they don't show
flies
it with
and
maggots. I'm just
well,
assuming that,
flies. You know what I meant.
but flies are on it, man. Like that's where maggots come from. I'm sure we all know that. Let's timeline and history. I'm actually on the Shogun website. I'm wondering if they have a map. Oh, that's rad. Dude, that's very cool. There's some great stuff on the FX website, like timeline, history, characters. They put a lot of detail into this. It's almost
It's
as if
like, yeah,
they actually love the history.
it's like they actually care about making a detailed product. They care about all the plot points and details that'll all add up. Huh.
Probably, so there's an episode guide. Which episode? So this was the episode Eightfold Fence, I'm pretty sure. So what happens is he ages the pheasant. It horrifies everyone in his household. He has been assigned he's assigned, what was her name? Kiko, I think is her name. Fuji. No, he's assigned Fuji as essentially a, what do they call her? A consort. They call her a consort. So she's basically expected to, shall we say, please him. And she's horrified because she's like, you're putting me with this barbarian. This is disgusting. And everyone pretty much believes that John Blackthorne, his biggest problem is he needs a really good lay. Like they're constantly like, dude, we got to get this guy laid because he is super uptight. And he keeps like swatting away all their gestures at this. He's got like he's kind of irritated by it. And so they assign her to him, and he's like, no, she's not into me, I can tell. And so he doesn't like force the issue. But she still has to kind of live in his house and deal with his odd customs. So she's horrified, and she's like,
For the
okay,
record, Fuji's had a very rough time in the show up to this point.
she has. Dude, Fuji is, I mean, good God. The woman has survived things psychologically that I just don't, I couldn't see many people surviving. She's tough. There's tough women in this show, I'll tell you. So she is like saying, no, we're going to get all new kitchen knives and everything, and they're not to be used on any of his food, because they're horrified that he's got this disgusting bird. He lets it rot, and he tells them kind of accidentally, because he doesn't really know the language that well yet. He's learning it. And he says, don't touch or die. Something like that. Like, don't touch. If touch, die. That's what he says. If touch, die. He says that in Japanese about the pheasant. But he keeps aging these pheasants, and they're stinking up the whole castle, and they're disturbing the garden. They're even disturbing like the peasants living outside the manor, and it's becoming this torture to the town. And John Blackthorne is blissfully unaware of this. So the gardener that he starts to form this friendship with starts teaching him about the way to take care of a garden and the purpose of it and the peace that it can bring you. And again, if you're just joining, spoilers for Shogun, episodes 4 through 6. But basically, he comes back one day and finds that the pheasant is gone. And he's irritated. He's like, where's my pheasant? And they're like, well, it's been taken away. And it's Fuji who kind of has this troubled look on her face. And she says, the gardener took it down. And he's like, really? Oh, where the devil is he? I want to talk to him. And she's like, he's dead. And he's like, what do you mean? What do you mean that the gardener is dead? He's like, well, you said if touch, die. So and he's like, are you telling me you had this man killed? And they're like, it was your order. You're a Hatamato, And he suddenly realizes that what happened is the old man took one for the team and decided he was already ill, but he decided to just end his life early. He took down the quail, the pheasant, for which everyone was grateful, and he buried it. And then they executed him in accordance with John Blackthorne's unwitting orders. And it's this horrific, like, reveal, and it's brilliantly done, and it's kind of what brings him to a breaking point where in episode 5 he's sort of demanding to return to England now because he just can't take it anymore. So, and that's actually what prompts Mariko to give him that line in episode 5 where he says, how can you have killed this man for something so small? And she said it wasn't something small, it was your order, and you're a Hatamoto. And he's like, how can you just be so okay with all this? And she says, look, we live and we die. That's our nature. And then there's this massive earthquake that, causes all this havoc. There's a landslide. And once again, John Blackthorne, this is in episode 5, John Blackthorne saves Toranaga's life, which gets him even more honors, which make everyone else even more jealous.
Oh, and for the record, in the miniseries, when the earthquake does occur, this is definitely where you have an instance of, maybe we can remake this and improve upon the first adaptation because we had limited technology, limited funding.
Right.
We can go off because the earthquake in the 1980 miniseries, the whole thing comes down to the camera shakes. I think they do a depression in the ground, and Richard Chamberlain jumps on Toshihiro Mifune, and that's the earthquake sequence. It's kind of like, oh, okay, that's how you saved his life. You kind of just held him down to make sure he didn't rattle over the place. Where this, we get full landslide, the whole third of the army's getting wiped out, being consumed by the earth. The town is taken out, though we don't actually see that happen in real time. We see the aftermath of it, but we get to see the full massive landslide. Toranaga is engulfed in the dirt. They have to go running down this mountainside, trying to dig him out and everything. Like, it is one of the best set pieces we've had thus far in the show.
Yeah, it's breathtaking. And by the way, that's the proper use of CGI. That's when CGI is in service to the story. See, this is why I get so frustrated with all the later Marvel crap, all these superhero fatigue. It's like a big part of it is just, it's a bunch of CGI volume gobbledygook. Why is it that? Because it's no longer serving a story, it's an end unto itself. And what's so brilliant about this scene is that, the CGI is a layer that's being added to telling the story. It allows us to tell the story more with more fine tuning, and that's the beauty of it. But we must interrupt.
I just saw that pop
dear
up.
Redoubt Productions, because Fu Man Blue with a $20 super chat says, "I just got home. What's up, lads? Well, what's up is you are awesome, Fu Man Blue. Captain, salute. Thank you for that. You're too kind, sir. You are too kind." Thank you very much. Well, what is up is your dear Captain Garrett of the channel Swords and Starships, live on YouTube, Rumble, and X, formerly Twitter, is joined by inestimable historian Redoubt Productions to discuss a great period piece, Shogun, based on the James Clavell novel, and we're reviewing it. Spoiler warning in effect. This is kind of a post-game show, so we're kind of assuming you've seen the show. But I think it's fair to say, and correct me if I'm wrong, Redoubt, but this is a show that I think you and I can just really sink our teeth into because it's such a glorious period piece. There's so much history. There's so much culture, both Western and Eastern culture explored here. And the clash of those cultures and the overlap of those cultures is brilliant. One of the things that's very fascinating about this show is we hear a lot. We hear a lot in modern critical race theory. There is this line that Western civilization was founded on colonialism and a sort of arrogance and conquest and that sort of thing. And to be fair, there is some truth to that, obviously. But what's fascinating about the problem with the narrative is it's one-sided. The problem with the narrative is it ignores the complexity of human culture, especially in ancient and much more distant past.
It takes the agency from all other cultures then. You're basically, the irony is of CRT or these ideas that the world is based around the Europeans, everybody's come and dominate. The irony is from CRT, they're like, how dare the Europeans do all these things and this and that, and they'll just go Europe, 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 Europe. And I'm like, by ironically, you're admitting that the world is European centric. You're doing ironically by going for all these ridiculous lengths to find every bit of racism and misogyny and all of this and that. And you always keep blaming the European colonizers. Just now, I'm like, man, you're giving way too much credit to the European
And you're
colonizers.
giving a pass to I don't know, the rest of humanity.
Yes.
Because listen, two wrongs don't make a right, but what's so fascinating about this show is it explores the fact that the Japanese culture of this time was very of this time, and that's important because Japanese culture has not always been isolationist or xenophobic. That's actually kind of a myth that a lot of Westerners have about Japanese culture. There were periods in Japan going back hundreds of years where they were very open to the rest of the world, but then they would go through periods of isolation. And this is actually a show that's kind of about them heading into one of those periods of isolation from the world. But in any case, at this time, they are very much they like much of humanity at this time. They live in a tribalistic state in which they view other cultures as the other. And so they see John Blackthorne as a savage. They see him as a barbarian. He is beneath them. And the Portuguese and Spanish see the Japanese as barbarians and savage and beneath them. And what really I think is fascinating is how both cultures, both Western Europe, Portuguese, Catholic, Spanish, English, all have their ideas of honor and civilized behavior. And what's so fascinating is the Japanese have a completely different idea of honor and civilized behavior. So they're both actually cultures that are very obsessed with civilization, culture, and honor. And in a way, they're kind of talking past each other, I think, because I see things to admire in both cultures. You know what I'm saying? Just as a viewer watching the show, it's like oftentimes when the Japanese are chastising the Westerners for their lack of civilization, I'm in agreement with them. I'm like, yeah, that's a very uncivilized, like John Blackthorne hanging up the pheasant. It's disgusting. But on the other hand, there's a scene where John Blackthorne is saying, like, you murdered my gardener for words. For taking a bird down from my eave. Like that's horrifying. You're treating life cheaply. And I sort of agree with him. And so what I like about it is it acknowledges the complexity and the beauty in both cultures and the ugliness in both cultures, because that's life, that's reality. That's nobody's perfect, and nobody especially in feudalistic times you know life was hard, and but there's beauty and honor to be found in sort of both cultures, and there's also greed, avarice, and you know really nasty behavior to be found in both cultures. And I find it really interesting. Sometimes I'm watching this show and I think I would love to be I would love to have what John Blackthorne has right now. He's the Hatamoto. He lives in this beautiful manor. He's in this
Oh
garden.
yeah, he does. I'm like, dude, you don't realize what
I'm
you
like,
have.
dude, you got it made. Like, this is paradise. But then, like, the next scene will happen, and I'll be like, shit, I'd be ready to go back to England. And I really do kind of
Fair
feel
enough.
that way back and forth. Because I like, yeah, that would be exhausting. Like, the eightfold fence and constantly having to play this Game of Thrones with these samurai. That would be so mentally exhausting that I would kind of want to go back home, right? So it's fascinating that the show shows you the different angles of everything. But at the same time, I find John Blackthorne's mentality exhausting at times, because he's like, I want to fight the Portuguese. I want to fight the Portuguese. I want to fight the Portuguese. I'm like, dude, chill for a minute. You know what I mean?
We get to that in episode 6. There is a meeting, and Blackthorne is still hell bent on getting out of Japan as soon as possible. So he has yet another meeting with Toranaga where he once again is like, I do not want to be part of your army. I want my ships. I want out of here. If you still insist on me helping you, I am more than happy to blow up the black ship on my way out. And Toranaga is just kind of like, no, we're done with the whole Portuguese stuff. England versus Portugal. There's more pressing matters right now.
There's so much to love about just the conversation It's fascinating to me that so many of the shows that I've watched recently have boring, bland dialogue, and sometimes I almost can't even tell you what exactly is wrong with it, other than that it's on the nose, like the Acolyte. What do you see? Close your eye, see fire. Chat GPT wrote that. Okay, I refuse to believe a thinking human wrote that, or at least an intelligent one. But what's fascinating is I love in this show I can watch. I'm literally hanging on every sentence between Blackthorn and Toranaga. And Hiroyuki Sanada's performance as Toranaga is just out of this world. It's absolutely fantastic. He is just crushing it in this show. He's so good. I've loved that actor ever since The Last Samurai. I've just anytime I see him on the screen, I'm like, we got a real player here. So, awesome. He was great in John Wick 4, by the way, as the Osaka Continental leader. I forget what are they called. Anyway,
Unfortunately, I only ever got to see the first John Wick. I got to see the rest of the series.
I'd watch the rest of them. I kind of think the third one is the weakest of them. I really liked 2. I think 2 was brilliant, and 4 probably had the most kind of like outlandish kind of fantasy elements, but it was pretty great. It was pretty fantastic, and just the thing that's so great is the action and the fight scenes just keep getting better and better and better. And really, the lore building is just really well done. And so, yeah, John Wick is from the very beginning is a film franchise that has won me over against my, in spite of myself, because like I didn't watch it for years because I thought it seemed dumb. I'm like, what, Keanu Reeves playing an assassin? I don't think so. And then I watched it, I'm like, it's freaking great. Anyway, so Sanada is he's fantastic, but these scenes between him and John Blackthorne where they're negotiating, every question has weight and purpose and kind of multiple layers to it. And I find myself hanging on like every answer that each man is giving the other. And that's such a... So if you're wondering like what the difference between good dialogue and bad dialogue is, this is the show to watch, or the novel, as the case may be.
Also,
to read.
keep in mind, folks, that 2 of our main leads, Blackthorn and Toranaga, they're communicating in different languages to each other.
Which also, that's another point. Mariko translating sometimes is actually like is getting in the way, because I'm thinking to myself, just cut her out for a minute and just do that. I really love they did this in the second episode, where they kind of just had her fade out and you just saw Toranaga's face, and it was just a reverse shot of him and
that
John
was great.
Blackthorne talking. I really liked that. I liked that technique, and I'm surprised they haven't used that again lately. But sometimes the conversations are going on so long, I start to get frustrated with her translating, not because it's poorly written, but because I'm so eager to hear the answer, I don't want to wait for her to translate. That being said, it's very important, her part of the translation, because she is often kind of arguing with him, or she's kind of slightly changing the wording. She's smoothing things over here and there, which is very important dramatically.
And also to mention, I've noticed by episode 6, it's clear that Blackthorn has learned certain words by that point, when he accepts new sword from Toranaga and is given basically an additional promotion for saving him, and also further my army's been wiped out, so I need to put new commanders in charge. There's certain times where he didn't need any translated needed. He kind of knew what was happening and everything.
Yes, I love.
So there's subtle elements. Yeah, it's subtly there that he is learning.
What's also really interesting is he is learning kind of against his will to actually. He's learning the things in Japanese culture that he is falling in love with, and I think that's a really brilliant part of his character. Like he goes from being he is just like, in the beginning, he's just like Guy Ladriel from Rings of Power. He's just throwing his weight around. He's yelling at people. He's mouthing off. He gets pissed on. He gets beat up. He gets thrown in prison. And now he's become very clever at how to like play the game, know when to bow, know when to shut the hell up, know when to speak up. Like he's gotten very much better at that. And it's so great to watch, I don't know, character progression. So, and again, if you've just tuned in, we are reviewing Shogun episodes 4 to 6, a banger series on FX. You got to watch it, based on the James Clavell novel. And if you're enjoying the content, like on YouTube, like on Rumble, throw a like on Twitter, click that little heart button. Share that stream out there, and we're going to keep chatting about it. Let's see here. Mai is in the chat. Welcome, Mai. Mai says it hasn't happened again because Father Martin translated truthfully everything JB and Toranaga said. Mark's translation is kept to show she is being very deliberated and intentional. Yeah, but don't misunderstand. I'm not saying that I dislike Mariko's part in the conversation. I do like it. I'm saying just as an audience, I'm so on the edge of my seat with what they're going to say that I just can't wait to hear what Toranaga is going to say. So that's not actually a criticism of the show. I'm saying that's what makes it, that's what's so brilliant, is that they've created enough tension in all of these scenes. And I love Mariko's character. She's just become so interesting. She's got such a, I love how you think she's so cold-blooded in the beginning of the show, and it turns out she's just got this deep soul. So no, I love the triumvirate relationship between Toranaga, Blackthorn, and her. There's something really just kinetic between those three characters. That they all are really good foils to each other, which is something I was talking about. You know, one of the problems with Ghostbusters Frozen Empire is that almost, there's I think Echo Chamberlain did an exact count. 16 protagonists. There are 16 main characters in Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. That's the real number. Okay. I would say that 3 to 4 of each of those characters is the same character sort of copied 3 or 4 times, right? And the problem is, the original Ghostbusters was 3 characters who were foils to each other, who bounced off of each other. So this is classical writing done really well. With Mariko, Toranaga, and John Blackthorn. They make also a really good triumvirate.
In the story setting, that is like an unholy trilogy, which terrifies all the other supporting characters, because they're trying to think like, what the hell is Toranaga doing? He is promoting this outsider to one of the highest echelons of our society. He's allowing this, well, we learn later on about Lady Miyako, her backstory that is a little bit, I don't want to say the scandalous isn't the word for it, but very controversial her backstory is in the eyes of the traditional values of Japan, because her father tried to did kill one of the lords, and Toranaga essentially is now using her in a very affluent location. I'm doing a horrible job explaining this. But basically they're both outsiders, essentially. Well, all 3 you could even say are outsiders, because Toranaga is about to be excommunicated from the council. He's all but literally been voted out, and most of the other regions want him dead. Most of Japan is kind of united against him right now. He only got a few vassals willing to support him, and even then they're on shaky ground. Then you got Blackthorn, who's quite literally an outsider because he is not from Japan, so it speaks for itself. And then you got I think they pronounce it Mariko. Man, my tongue cannot just do it. That Yinzer tongue can just not do these names. She's an outsider because of all of the things that her family had done in the past. So she's basically persona non grata in most facets of Japan culture at the moment. So everybody's wondering, like, what the heck are these 3 people doing, basically having the power in this portion of the country at the moment?
Yeah, because what happened with, and we get this reveal in episode 6. Well, we get it in 5.
Even earlier, we were getting teased.
Yeah, because well, let's get into that in just a second. But the Ultimate Kahuna's in the chat. Welcome, Ultimate Kahuna. What about your Kahuna, sir? What about them? But anyway, I see we're friendly. We've got support in the chat for Ultimate Kahuna, and we love to see it. We love to see it.
Welcome.
We're building a fellowship, a little fellowship within a fellowship over here on the Swords and Starships
Within a
channel.
fellowship, within a fellowship, within a fellowship.
I love that. I love that Gary over at Nerdrotic has coined that or brought into prominence the use of the word fellowship instead of community, because it's like I'm done with the word community.
Yeah, community's been used. It's been turned into commie gobbledygook.
It's been turned into a term of pride, and I mean that in the 7 deadly sin sense. Pride and tribalism. It's it's become my community. It's like, no, we don't need that. What we need is fellowship. All right, so we should get to the kind of the subplot going on. I mean, I guess it's kind of a subplot. I mean, we basically have a B story in Shogun, which is a love story between John Blackthorne and Mariko. And what I love about Mariko is she's so closed off to the world because she's been playing this deadly Game of Thrones for so long that she's just got this wall up all the time. And Ultima Kuna says, if we are making a tribe, I'll be Shogun, and I'll be John Blackthorne. And I humbly request to trade with you and open a second front against the Portuguese and the damned Spanish, the damned dastardly Catholics. Anyhow, so Fu Man Blue's going to fight him for the shogunate. Okay, go at it. Fight now. That's right. As Heath Ledger's Joker would say, we only have one opening, so we're gonna have tryouts. Make it
jokes on them while they're fighting. I'm just gonna capture all of their viewers, and then I'm gonna put them in my shogunate.
Yes, that's right. It's a Game of Thrones between the Captain and Redoubt. Now, so what happens is Mariko reveals that her husband... I forgot about this. Her husband, who was presumed to be dead in the 3rd episode because he went down fighting all these overwhelming odds. Well, it turns out he survived, and this is a very unfortunate timing because it's right after the night that John Blackthorne is, he's in bed, and Mariko slips into his room, and he slips into Mariko. But anyway, they do the nasty. They bump uglies, the hunka chunka. And the next morning, John Blackthorne's feeling pretty happy about this because he's definitely crushing hard on Mariko. But then Mariko's like, oh, did you enjoy the courtesan last night? And he's like, oh, right, the courtesan. So she's not letting on. Now, she thinks her husband's dead at this point, that's classic. That's a classic trope if ever there was one. She thinks her husband's dead. Well, her husband shows up the very next day. He's very much alive.
What are the odds?
Yeah, he beat the odds, and now he's a giant asshole. He really we find out why he's such an asshole, and there is a really great sequence where John Blackthorne is having a sake drinking contest with him, and they're really just like egging each other on, and it's like, oh, this is going to a bad place. And we get the reveal that Mariko grew up as the daughter of a lord who had a rivalry with another feudal lord, and her father wound up basically killing his lord. So he's kind of he is viewed as a traitor, and so Mariko's entire family was killed in response, in retribution. However, her husband, who was her husband at the time, decided to show her mercy, and he let her off the hook. But she has kind of been secretly behind her 8-fold fence. She has been secretly nourishing a desire for revenge or suicide. Like, she wants one or the other. Her family's been wiped out, and she either wants retribution or to commit seppuku. And she's sort of been ordered by Toranaga, her husband, and everybody else because she's so important. She has to stay on Earth, and she has to just have to swallow her desire for revenge. And it's been eating at her all these years, and it's created this bitter relationship between her and her husband because her husband has been hoping that his act of mercy would sort of melt her icy heart, and instead it's never changed. And so he's kind of turned into this. He's bitter and hateful towards her. She is cold and unfeeling towards him, and he beats the shit out of her in like the 5th episode, and John Blackthorne finds out, and it's all they can do to keep John Blackthorne from like killing this guy, which would be very bad. Which brings us neatly along to episode 6, where Toranaga is frustrated. He's frustrated because he's like, what's the name of the character that Mariko's husband? What's his name?
No, let's just keep calling him that. Mariko's husband. He does have a name. I mean, me and Kahuna are coining a much better term for him in the chat. Okay.
Buntaro. Okay, so Buntaro, who has beaten the crap out of Mariko, which has pissed off John Blackthorne, and John goes to Toranaga and makes a stink about it. So Toranaga's kind of in a pickle. I think it was, there's a line where Toranaga says to Mariko, he's like, this is very frustrating. A man can do with his wife as he pleases. However, I can't have my translator being beaten up. Now, what I like about this scene is, obviously, aside from the historical barbarism of that statement, there is, he doesn't actually mean that. Like, this is what's so brilliant about multi-layered characters, especially if you're still out there, Stormcrow. Because I know you sometimes ask about this, but thank you, Mai. You had it in the chat. I missed it. Buntaro. Thank you. I view every good character as having the 3 layers, right? There's the conscious layer, there's the subconscious layer, and then there's the deep-seated layer. And in really bad, boring characters, such as in Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, for example, you don't really have those layers, right? And what's so great about this show is they have those multiple layers. Now, what I like about that scene is this is a demonstration of that, because Toranaga says, well, a man can do with his wife as he pleases, right? And on the conscious layer, he is essentially acting as though he approves of this behavior. What's really going on, though, is Toranaga probably a part, he likes Mariko and he disapproves of this behavior on the part of her husband, even though custom does not really allow him to make a stink about it. So what he's doing is he's making a rationale for why he can sort of take her side. But there is also I would say that's kind of the deeper layer with Toranaga, is he does kind of care about her and he does kind of want to intercede. But on the conscious layer, what Toranaga is really about is, don't break my translator, asshole. And he can't just go flying off the handle, because, that would cause a bunch of problems among the ranks. So what he has to do is he has to find an honor-bound way of kind of chastising Buntaro without stepping on his rights as a husband, right? So I really love how these characters are always kind of threading the needle with how they phrase things and how they're coming up with ways to deal with problems. So that's kind of where we're at in episode 6. John Blackthorne has saved Toranaga from a landslide, but now Toranaga is really in the hot seat because the council is pushing hard to have him executed. And there are a lot of very brilliant Game of Thrones playing ladies in this show, that being Mariko. And Mariko has a nemesis, because in the 6th episode, Ladies of the Willow World, we learned that her childhood friend, Mai, do you have the name of the childhood friend? Kiku. No, that's Kiku. I think I have that one. Yeah. Kiku was the daughter of the lord that Mariko's father killed. Okay? So essentially, Mariko's dad killed Kiko's dad. And so Kiko has been really pissed about this ever since they were children. Now, Kiko is wait, is that right? Oh, I'm sorry. Kiko is the courtesan. That was totally the wrong one. Lady Ochiba. Thank you, Mai. Mai has it. Okay. Lady Ochiba. That's what I'm talking about. So Lady Ochiba was the childhood friend of Mariko. And what happened is Ochiba then was betrothed to the Taigen, because the Taigen had failed to produce an heir after many years and many different tries. And Lady Ochiba went through all of this hell. Not least of which was just having to sleep with this old man that she didn't want to sleep with. But she also went through all of these painstaking, miserable fertility practices in order to conceive of an heir. She wanted to because that was her way of taking control of her fate. Because if she produced a male heir where all these other consorts had failed, she would have real political power. And she succeeded. And she does have real political power. And what's revealed in episode 6 is that she has a grudge, an axe to grind against Mariko and Toranaga because she thinks Toranaga plotted the death of her father. And so she is basically strong-arming the regents into fighting this war with Toranaga. Now, how is she strong-arming them? She's doing this by subtly manipulating Ishido and basically explaining to Ishido that, like, if you don't take control of this situation, Toranaga is going to end you because he's really good at this. And if you want to be, the biggest name in the land, take him out. So she's planting all these seeds and getting him to essentially hold the rest of the regions hostage and force them to act on Toranaga. Toranaga's in a corner, and now he's sort of forced to act on Osaka and take out the regents. So this all leads to a really great scene in which Lady Ochiba is kind of, and her performance is freaking, it's creepy. It is
yeah,
scary.
she is terrifying.
Dude,
we have had a lot of we've had a lot of dramatic stuff happen in the first 5 episodes. We've had people get beheaded, people blown up with artillery, near-death experiences on the water. Nah, that wasn't the scary stuff. This is the scary stuff in episode 6 when she's introduced.
Yes, because in fact, let me just do
reintroduce, I should say.
I'm trying to find the actress who plays Oshiba. Fumi Nikaido plays. Is that the right one? Is that who I'm looking for? Ochiba Nokata?
Yep, that'd be her.
Okay. Yeah, so Fumi Nikaido is the actress who plays Ochiba Nokata. Let me see if I can pull this up here. Yeah, here we go. I can just share my screen. Let's see. Present. Share screen. Here you go. Talk about badass babes. Now, she has this just kind of creepy, almost like serial killer kind of performance in this scene where she's kind of pouring honey into Lord Ishido's ear. And she's kind of telling the story of how...
For the record, this is not a tire scene in Shogun. This is completely...
No. This is not from Shogun. This is just the actress, right? But in any case... Well, it's notable because it's like we get so many girl boss villains in like Marvel, and they're boring, like Durbin in the Marvels, not intimidating, not scary at all. It's like when a character is well written, it's amazing how frightening they can be, no matter what kind of role in society they occupy. And she just has like these like murder eyes in this scene, and she's basically saying like, when I was sold to the Taiko to just be his cow to bear children. I'm paraphrasing, obviously. That's how she thinks of it, right? I decided I was going to produce an heir because that would give me the power I needed to take control of things and get my revenge. And she's like, and she has this great line, and she's kind of like walking, because Ishido is getting cold feet. He's starting to back down. He's starting to think like, I can't control the regions.
Well, what we learn about Ishido is he's willing to talk the talk, but he's not really willing to walk the walk, if that makes any sense.
Right, exactly.
He is nothing more than a bureaucrat, and that's actually directly told to his face in the show. Yeah.
He's a pencil pusher. So she kind of like slides behind him, and she's just like, I looked at fate in the eyes, and I made fate look back at me so I could scratch its eyes out. And I was like, that was pretty good. That's a pretty good line. I like that a lot, because she is wielding power in the way that she can wield power in this world, which is she's playing on Ishido's pride, but she's also playing on his fears. It's a great performance by the actress Fumi Nikaido. And that's one of the things I really appreciate about this show, is that the characters, to the extent that they are intimidating or malevolent, it is earned through what we see. It's showing, not telling. And that's what I really like about it. So what was that, Fumi? It sounds like she gave both of them PTSD. Well, probably. Now that being said, it's not like she's kind of acting as a catalyst to sort of push the regents to fight Toranaga. Um, but that being said, this is a situation that is, I mean, this is going to happen. Like these feudal lords are going to have this fight no matter what. So that's kind of where we're at. There is a plan called Crimson Dawn, if I'm not mistaken. Crimson Dawn, which is the plan to invade Osaka, but it's kind of it's a total meat grinder. It's looks pretty much like a suicide mission because from Toranaga's perspective, he's just lost a great percentage of his army from the landslide, which is really bad. He's going to unite with his brother, but that's not going to give them quite enough numbers. So again, they are setting the table for the battle. They're establishing the stakes, what happens, how difficult it's going to be, what happens if we lose. I liked the scene where Toranaga says, find me something else. Find me a plan that's not suicidal. But then at the end of the episode, he changes his mind because, the events escalate. And he's like, okay, we're going with Crimson Dawn. I was a little disappointed by that because I kind of wanted to see him come up with a sort of third option and involve, I was thinking, involve Blackthorn in this. Blackthorn has a plan to use his ship. I'm not ruling that out in the next episode, but I kind of expected that's what we were going to see, is something along the lines of a third option with John Blackthorn. I'm John Blackthorn, and I wish to treat with your lord. Fantastic character. But so anyway, I'm excited. The table is set for a battle royale. We've got how many episodes is this series? I think it's going to be 8.
I think it's going to be 10, actually.
Is it 10?
I think
it is 10. Holy crap. We got a lot.
Yeah,
of
we're only just a little halfway through.
Let's see. Chapter 9 is titled Crimson Sky, not Crimson Dawn. Crimson Sky. I think Crimson Dawn is like a cult in Elder Scrolls.
And Red Dawn is a 1984 movie about what would happen if the Soviet Union, for some reason, teamed up with, what was it, Nicaragua and Cuba and invaded America. Well, those countries, especially Nicaragua, this is totally.
I'm laughing because I was thinking of the update where it became North Korea instead of the Russians. I'm like, they're like doing a land invasion. I'm like, oh, come on.
North Korea invading the west coast of the United States?
They
go ahead.
Have the balls to make it
my
China.
Day.
No, China could maybe pull off a land invasion of the United States, assuming you ruled out the nuclear situation. But that's the problem with those movies is like we don't live in a world where we can have wars like that anymore.
They're sitting there and, Toranaga announces we are going to go Crimson Sky. Meanwhile, Yabushige's mind goes, oh no, he wants us to go sit in the woods and bushwhack. Wouldn't it be hilarious if Yabushige got a vision of the 1980s and just had a transmission of the movie for his brain? Like, what the hell? Oh, different. Oh, different one. Okay. We mean we're bum rushing the capital.
Stormcrow with a spoiler, with a not spoiler. No spoilers, but Toranaga doesn't want Blackthorn on that ship. No, fair enough, Stormcrow. Yeah, I don't know if you heard me earlier. If you want to come on the stream, you can. You can join us if you want. If you've been watching the show and you want to talk about it, we're doing episodes 4 through 6. Actually, you know what I really like in this episode to kind of close the loop on the philosophy of the series, which is one of my favorite elements of it, because we get the eightfold fence in episode 4, and then we get in episode 5 Mariko kind of explaining literally right before the earthquake to John Blackthorn that our lives begin and they end, and that's all there is, and we just have to accept that that's our role in life, which I find an intriguing idea and also a repugnant idea in equal measure, like an attractive and repugnant idea in equal measure, because I think it's very much part of the Western civilization mindset that like we are in control of our own fate. It's just fascinating that these characters see things differently and that brings them a level of peace in this violent world that they live in. And so we get to episode 6, and Toranaga he's doing a funeral service for all the men who died. I'll send you the link in Discord, Stormcrow. Hang on 1 second. Hang on. Stormcrow. There it is. So Toranaga's giving this funeral memorial for all of his dead soldiers, and he says, something along the lines of like, we don't control, when we die or something. But then he says, death is all is. He said, we've endured a lot of death, we've endured a lot of suffering, but death is itself proof that we lived, and so therefore death is in and of itself an affirmation of life. And I thought, what a fascinating and like super deep way of looking at it. And I hate the idea of like glorifying death itself, but I do like the idea that is one way to look at death. So we welcome now to the show Stormcrow. Stormcrow, have you been watching Shogun? And if so, what are your thoughts?
I am coming from a perspective of a book reader, actually.
Oh, okay.
All right. We have a book
You have
reader.
alluded to this.
What are your thoughts as a book reader?
I'm going to be honest. I think I kind of prefer the show. Weirdly
Really?
enough. Yes.
Interesting.
Because it's strange because I think this show feels more Japanese. If it's, like the book, you get the sense that this is purely from an American's, I don't know what this guy was, Australian, I believe, right? Who wrote the book. This isn't as, let me organize myself here.
I know, I put you right in the hot seat.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. The book feels way too Western for this kind of story. The show, however, with the Japanese production and everything, it feels more authentic to the philosophy and the ideas, and more importantly, the setting of feudal Japan than the book really did. It's kind of a difference.
The period authenticity is gorgeous in the show. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, honestly, I kind of think that the show is a bit more realistic? Question mark.
Well, here's what I'm going to add to Crow, because I did a little just looking up the writing. So James Clavell, who wrote the original book, he was British Australian. This particular miniseries is being co-written by the married couple Justin Marks and Rachel Cotto. Interesting detail: Justin Marks is credited as assisting on the story writing for Top Gun Maverick.
Really?
Yes.
That's interesting.
Fascinating.
I don't know.
They've written.
I don't know if they kind of work together on that, if that was just his role, but he does have a credit on Top Gun Maverick, and they're both working on the main story elements, the adaptation that we're seeing right now for Shogun.
Fascinating.
Well, I like how there's a balance between Toranaga and Blackthorn as protagonists, and they have a really interesting cultural exchange. Because he's a fish out of water and Toranaga is kind of a man who needs a lifeline. What are your thoughts on that, Stormcrow?
Oh, it's a completely one-sided relationship. I'm speaking as a book reader, by the way. You gotta understand, Toranaga as a character is fascinating because it's the same reason I love Tywin Lannister. He's a piece of shit. But this is more dangerous. He's a competent, intelligent, and charismatic piece of shit.
Well, no spoilers. I don't want to, but
no spoilers. No spoilers.
My reading of the character of Toranaga, I don't consider him a piece of shit, though. No, I think he's at least so far. So that's why I'm saying no spoilers. But so far, from my perspective, the Tycho wanted him to stabilize the realm, and he sort of played along with the Regent's game so that he could. He is manipulative, and he is running game on everyone in the show, but kind of so is everybody else. Like, so are the regents, so is Ishido, so is Lady Ochiba. Like, they're all running games. So to me, he's no worse than any other, feudal lord. But at least he seems to be a man who is roughly just and seems roughly benevolent towards his subjects. You don't really see him interacting with his subjects very much. But anyway, that's kind of my reading of him so far. He is definitely manipulative. He's definitely moving the chess pieces. What? Yeah. Anything else to add, Stormcrow?
But Tornaga, I could see why Crow. You might be saying he's a bit more. He is far more rude in the book than perhaps in the miniseries depictions.
I'm not saying I would trust the guy. I'm just saying, from my perspective as a viewer, he has not yet convinced me one way or the other. I'll say that. I don't think he's convinced me whether he's a good or a bad man quite yet. But I don't see him as... I certainly see Ishido as more odious than he is. Like, Ishido, to me, is a tyrant. He's a bureaucrat. He's a bad guy to me. I haven't decided yet with Toranaga. But I do love how brilliant he is, that's for sure.
Oh yeah. He's a competent bad guy, and I love me some competent bad guys. And if you don't mind, there is something that really fascinated me with the book and the show, and that's basically how there's no easy way to say this. The Japanese have always been suicidal. That's just something that they've always been. I mean, come on now. They ritualize suicide to an extent where, well, what happened in the previous episode where the guy spoke out of turn and he's like, "Oh no, I'm sorry, sir. If you give me the permission to kill myself right now," permission denied. That's more dishonorable for some reason. Like you're just wasting resources and all that. But no, it's you gotta perform. It's your duty to perform. You cannot deviate from the play. It's a shame if you do. So you perform to the best of your abilities or you die. And if the performance demands that you die, you gotta die. Yeah, that's I think not human.
In this time, I actually disagree. I think it's very human. I think in this time and place, I would say it's fair to say that the culture embraced suicide, right, as an act of honor, and that's certainly and they did in World War II as well. But I think after World War II, they realized how they moved away from that cultural belief system. But the thing is, I think glorifying suicide is something it's actually fairly common in human culture. Just look at the Romans. Look at the ancient Greeks. It was very common to
the power of martyrdom.
It was very common to kill oneself in ancient times as a matter of honor. In fact, I think that's pretty common in a lot of feudalistic cultures. Maybe not exactly the way we see it play out in the samurai culture, in the Bushido Code, but it is absolutely something that we see in a lot of other cultures around the world. And there's other kinds of honor-bound rituals that cheapen life. And I think one of the, I wrote a couple of books set in early 1800s America. Back when in the early days of the U.S. Navy, they had to literally make it a full-blown standing order that officers were no longer to challenge each other to duels because they were losing too many officers to duels. Because back in the 18th century and early 19th century America, it was fully acceptable to settle. Now, I should say it was going out of style, depending on the state you were in. But it was generally culturally acceptable to challenge someone to a duel to the death, to settle a matter of insult. To settle a matter of insult. And famously, Alexander Hamilton and Aaron Burr is one of the most famous examples, but that was common back then.
Can you imagine the beautiful world we could live in if we could just duel each other to death to solve problems?
Oh, Starcrow! You can't say that on YouTube. You can't say that.
I'm a minority. I'm allowed to say that.
That's not how that works. That's not how being a minority works. No, I'm just
I'm
kidding.
brown. I'm a brown skinned Puerto Rican. I have more right to say it than you two. So there.
All right, fair
Argument
enough.
one.
What does that have to do with what does that have to do with the old dueling culture? No, I'm just messing. But I think what's funny is well, that I mean, I think it's easy to like look at a culture like that and say, yeah, that's like a suicidal culture. But I think about it and I'm like, one of my great historical heroes was Commodore Stephen Decatur, who fought in the War of 1812. And how did he die? The man had fought successfully like 5 or 6 duels in his life, and how he died was his final duel. He was a celebrated, decorated admiral in the U.S. Navy, and he challenged a man to a duel over an insult. I believe that was the guy it was the other captain who was in the captain of the Chesapeake, who had to surrender the Chesapeake to the British. And they got in an argument, and he got shot I think he got shot like in the hip or something, and he died in horrific agony. It took him hours to bleed out, and it was he was quoted as saying, like, I never knew you could feel pain like this. It was awful. And he died a pretty horrible death fighting a duel. And Aaron Burr thought that when he shot Alexander Hamilton that he would be vindicated. His honor he would be proven to be an honorable man. And technically speaking, that was generally the perception of settling a matter with a duel. It was a way of settling it honorably. But it totally had the opposite effect. Everyone's like, he took off his glasses and you just shot him like a dog, So then Aaron Burr had a warrant out for his arrest in New York and spent the rest of his life as a pariah. So
I don't have much kind thing to say about either man.
So it's easy. I just think like what a barbaric and life cheapening tradition that was.
And it also comes down to
hold on, sir. Considering the crop of politicians we have, is it any less efficient than dealing with worms running our lives?
Maybe not. But that being said, Immortal Rising comic book is in the chat. And
Hello.
Waves. Oh,
hi. We appreciate you,
Stormcrow. Yeah, I love having you on, my friend. However, your audio is leaving something to be desired. So
yeah, I have to go. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So I think, but any final thoughts on Shogun as a book reader, or just thoughts you had about it before you go?
Well, let's see. The book was fine. The show is better, but if you want real, authentic samurai Japanese goodness, just do yourself a favor and go read Musashi by by A.G. Yoshioka. And funnily enough, he also wrote a book about the previous shogun. Well, we're not allowed to call them shoguns. That's not proper or indecency. But A.G. Yoshioka also wrote a book of the time period before Shogun, technically, and it's more realistic to that. So, good book, great show, but if you want real Japanese stuff, just go read A.G. Yoshioka. Way better stuff.
A.G. Yukiyosha? Sounds good, man. I love that. I hope we get more series like this, because I love this time and place. I cannot believe that they did not make an Assassin's Creed based in feudal Japan. How could they mess that up? I mean, it's fantastic. So,
yes, but don't jinx it, sir. Remember, we get one, and the rest are garbage. Lord of the Rings rule.
We get like 0.5 for every 10 rings of power that we get.
You take one step forward and 100 steps back.
Dude, I feel bad about the shows I roasted 10 years ago. The shows I roasted 10 or 15 years ago, I literally am like, I regret that. Those were great shows compared to
I would take that today.
All right, Stonecrow. Well, it was great having you aboard, and we'll see you for the Fallout campaign.
Woo! April 12th, right?
I haven't nailed down an exact date, but thereabouts. I can't promise that date yet.
Sometime in the 4th month of the year in our Lord, 2024.
Make sure you check the Fallout channel on the Discord. And I'm
going to give you a little teaser before I go for my character.
All right,
all I'm going to say is a John Wayne movie directed by Akira Kurosawa.
That would be cool.
And
John
that's
Wayne
all I'm gonna
movie.
say.
So you're going to be, and in the Fallout universe, if you don't know what we're talking about, my dear audience, we are going to have on this channel, the Swords and Starships channel, we are going to have a 10-session Fallout campaign using the Fate RPG, because I think the new Fallout show is going to suck. I think they're ruining another one. And so we're going to do it different. We're going to give you an alternative. And I want to give you a preview, Stormcrow. Check this out. I'm working on my custom Fate worksheet here. Let me see if I can pull this up here. Let's see. I think I can share this.
I think, therefore, I can. Hey,
All right, hang
philosophy.
on. Present. Share screen.
Oh,
Right, there we
and
go.
then before I forget,
I'm working on... Sorry, what?
Before I forget, I got your man Fu Man Blue to watch Evangelion, by the way.
You are obsessed with getting everyone to watch Evangelion. What's up?
Did you see it, sir?
I can't. I did see it. It had a terrible ending, though. All right. Well, you know what? It's not coming up for me. So I'll show you later, though. I'll get
wrong.
you.
Don't.
Hey, this is Shogun. So all right, Stormcrow.
Shogun better have a great ending. Better not end like Evangelion.
Oh,
No
boy.
spoilers.
Okay. Yeah. Goodbye, everyone. Have fun. Good night. Thank you. See you all on Royce's channel in 20 minutes. Goodbye.
All right, on Drink with Crazy. We'll see you there.
Yes, sir. Goodbye.
And there he goes. That would be Stormcrow. That another sailor and/or star knot here on the Swords and Starships channel. Yes, I'm looking. I want to get you an image of what I'm working on here. Redoubt, give me your next thoughts on episode 6 of Shogun.
Yeah, let's see. We talked about Lady Uchiba.
Have we covered everything?
I was only going to mention one more smaller detail. It's about Fuji. I think it's episode 5. It's either 4 or 5. She does not want to be the consort of Blackthorn at all. Like, she is like protested when she's first told this. She's like, I've been through enough. Please, why do you have to put me through more? But she very quickly throws herself into the role. And I think she only agrees to 6 months, but she throws herself in the role. And there's a sequence where he's going off to the first day of training for the cannon corps, and he wants to go with his sidearms, and they won't let him go to the course with the sidearms. They don't want him with firearms on him, I guess, because they don't trust him. Because you have to remember, Toranaga's not around right now. Yabashuge is in charge of the village at the moment. So they're like, yeah, no, you're not walking here with your sidearms. So she takes them from Blackthorn and refuses to give them to Yabashige's forces. Just outright is like, I will protect this with my life.
That scene is brilliant. Brilliant.
And then later on, she gives what she claims are the swords of her father, saying that, if you're going to be Hadamoto, you have to have your own set of swords. So please have mine from the family. Later on, Mariko does mention that they're not, she's like, you have to understand that those swords, we told Fuji that this is where they came from. In reality, we just picked them up at a market. They're like low tier, but that doesn't matter in the end, because after the avalanche occurs, the landslide occurs, and they dig Toranaga out, they find that Toranaga's swords are missing. So Blackthorn gifts Fuji swords to Toranaga. So those swords that are supposedly worthless, what Mariko says are basically worthless, now they're being carried by the potential shogun of the whole country.
Which is a pretty amazing. See, that's like a little mini story arc. There's that's what really good multi-episode, TV series storytelling needs, is really good little mini arcs that pay off that way. It's one of the reasons why I went through the Battlestar Galactica series Bible, which, by the way, I published the clip of that
you
on
did.
the channel, so check out that video.
I did get the notification.
Yeah, it's great. It's like it's just me going through the brilliance of Ronald D. Moore's Battlestar Galactica series Bible and how it just gives you, arcs within arcs, and that's how you create a good show. But yeah, what I really love about that is how Fuji, in that situation, Blackthorn and the samurai it's escalating because he's got his gun aimed at the samurai and he's like, I'm gonna shoot you, you dumb bastard. He's escalating. And then the samurai are like, well, we're going to kill you, give us the guns. And it's a stalemate because both men's sense of honor demands that they don't back down. And so what's so brilliant is that Fuji kind of creates a third option, which is here. The laws of honor allow me to protect your weapons for you, my lord. And so she protects his weapons. And then they're like, okay, cool. You can just give those over to us now, say the samurai. And she's like, you go to hell. And she aims a gun at them. And she's like, you ain't getting these. That would be dishonor to my lord. And it's like that force. It allows them to save face, but it also forces the issue through the code of honor. And it's like that. Not only is that great storytelling, but it's great character work for Fuji, showing her relationship with him evolving. I love it. Absolutely. Great point. Great call out, Redoubt. And yeah, and you see those swords work their way into becoming literally the swords Lord Toranaga is carrying. These swords from humble beginnings. It's brilliant. So just to quickly close the loop on the Fallout thing. This is what I'm working on. This is what I'm working on, my dear audience, for the Fallout.
Behold!
It's going to be... this is my custom Fate RPG Fallout, interface. I'm trying to design it to look like a Pip-Boy. So yes, we're gonna have your aspects, skills, perks, all that good stuff. So maybe it's too green. I don't know. I'll have to play with it. But anyway, that's what we're working on. So we're gonna be doing.
My God,
April.
it's like the Matrix. I'm looking into the code.
Yeah. Well, we're going to do, it's going to be called Dead Man's Cache. So there's going to be an exciting adventure. And, we'll see what we can do. I really think this Fallout show is going to be awful. I'm open to being wrong about this, but you never know.
Oh, no. Oh, you mean the Amazon Prime? I thought I thought you were self-deprecating on your own show.
My show. My show's going to be brilliant. It's going to be way better than anything on Amazon.
Indeed.
But Amazon show is going to be an absolute disaster, I think. That first scene that they showed of her getting saved by plot armor, that sealed it for me. I'm like, yeah, this is lazy storytelling. This is so lazy. What do you mean, like, hey, wait a minute, Fu Man Blue? What? Elaborate. I can tell you more. Also, the blue-haired girl is super weird. I don't know. Who was the blue-haired?
Ray Ayanami.
You said, I'm going to be on your show, so of course it'll be the stuff of legend. Exactly, Fu Man Blue. Indeed. I agree with you. It will be the stuff of legend because you will be there. So I'm looking forward to it. Now, I'm also not looking forward to all the work I'm going to have to do. I bought myself all this work to do. But it's work I enjoy doing, so...
I hope it goes well, because if it's a successful endeavor and you want to do a new RPG, I hope I can join in later in the year.
Yeah, and Staffyuri was saying that if it were a Mass Effect campaign, he'd be all for it. And I'm like, dude, I've done Mass Effect campaigns with Fate as well, and so, yeah, that will happen. That will happen. Speaking of, I've heard that, like, the new Mass Effect is supposedly in the hands of trilogy veterans, and it's like, I am so jaded. I don't even trust that news at all. I'm like, and I have no reason to think they're going to destroy Mass Effect, except that when they did the Mass Effect Legendary Edition, there was that whole thing about how they had to, like, de-emphasize Miranda's booty and stuff like that. I'm like, dude, it's too late. It's too late for Mass Effect. I
never played the Mass Effect games because I was not much of a person for video games, but I have the same position with franchises I loved. Like, they're making Alien Romulus right now, and I'm like, I don't care. I have no faith.
I don't care either.
The bridges have been burned. It's like, you got to make some fantastic content to bring me back at this rate. You got to really shock and awe, because I'm done. I've gone through the 5 stages of grief with a lot of our franchises being destroyed. I've moved on from most of it. Doctor Who I still can get very flustered about sometimes, but that's a story for another day. But yeah, all the bridges have been burned. I'm enjoying the independent content that's available. A lot of it for free on the internet. I can just look it up, type it in, and start reading and start watching. Try to compete with that mainstream media.
Yeah, exactly. It's amazing. The worse their projects are received, the more money they lose, the more entitled these writers and actors seem. It's like, why doesn't anyone want to watch our content? Well, because it's crap. Because you eat glue. That's why. It's just, you had the supervillain in Madam Web be killed by a Pepsi sign. I can't even. It's like stupid crap. But what's so great about a show like Shogun is it reminds you what complex storytelling, character-driven storytelling. Like, I mean, really, that's probably the biggest problem with the stuff that's not good is it's not character-driven storytelling. It's not. Characters should be so well developed in a series that they do things that surprise the writers. That's really what it comes down to. They should do things on occasion that surprise the writers and paint the writers into a corner if they don't work their way out of it. And what bothers me about like that Fallout first scene that they showed is that first of all, it just annoys me that they're portraying her as this way over the top utopian, which is that's not exactly what the Vault Dwellers are supposed to be, but whatever. But she's like, you sir must now surrender because you are harming that civilian and blah 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 blah. And I'm like, oh come on.
That's not how I've depicted. I thought the Vault was more of a latch ditch survival thing. I wasn't expecting it to be like this. This is the future. Everything's gonna be perfect down here. No, it's the world's gone to crap. But hey, you were smart enough to buy your way in and get one of these vaults.
Yeah, that's the marketing, right? That's the marketing that's what it is, but that's not necessarily what it actually is going to be. But even so, Vault Dwellers are trained to survive, and they are equipped to rebuild the wasteland. That's it. In the games, you choose who you are. So, whether you're going to be benevolent or malevolent is up to you as the player, and that's part of the game. And so obviously in the show, granted, they can choose to write whatever character they want on that spectrum. I'm just saying she is so idiotically naive. But then she's confronting the ghoul, and she's pointing this non-lethal dart at him, and she fires the dart, and of course it doesn't affect him because it's a very large bucket of drugs. And then he's about to gun her down. And the only thing that saves her is that the Brotherhood of Steel guy just says, hey, the lady told you to put the weapon down. By the way, he could have still shot her right then. He could have just like finished, oh, what was I doing? Oh yeah, shoot her. And then he could deal with the Brotherhood guy, He doesn't even have to like spare her life at that point, but he does because the plot just needs him to become their buddy. And it's like,
the blood has demanded thee.
Here we go. There's a way that could play out. But whatever. Girl boss gonna girl boss.
Also, it just seems so late now to do a Fallout, like a Fallout series.
Yeah, I'm disappointed because I think they're treating this as total camp, and I'm not surprised at all because the video games. Yes, I know we've swerved out of Shogun talk and into Fallout, but the video games have an element of camp in them, and the camp that is in them is really in reference to the pre-war propaganda of the Red Scare. That's really what it is. There was this sort of jingoistic pre-war quasi-fascistic propaganda that was saturating American culture, and a lot of it was also driven by just consumerism and marketing, and that's the satire, that's the camp element of Fallout. The whole thing about the Vault Tech Pip-Boy and all those characters is that they are meant to represent that. But the actual world of the wasteland and the depravity that's going on in the wasteland and the murderous raiders and the horrific slavers and the mutants and the mutated creatures, it's like all that stuff is meant to be horrific and kind of hopeless and soul crushing. But then there's the hopeful element of like there are still ragged survivors who have cobbled together something approaching a sort of civilization in the ruins of this old world that was. That's a very melancholy, that's a very meditative and philosophical theme element, I would say, or motif is the word I'm looking for. It's a very melancholy motif that runs through the story. Like, I was working on this, and I put on some music from the Fallout series, and what's interesting is one of the comments on the YouTube video was someone who said that they had never played Fallout 3 without the radio turned on, and the radio just plays oldies, right? I've never played it with the radio on. I mean, I turn it on, but I never leave it on. I like the music of Ein Zur that plays in the background in those games, you know, this kind of moody, atmospheric music. And so the commenter was saying that for the first time in years, they played it with that music. And like, wow, I never realized just the level of atmosphere that brings to the game. And it's like, that's the point. It is a sad thing. It's a tragic thing to be wandering through the ruins of Washington, D.C. and to look over at the what used to be the reflecting pool near the Washington Monument is now a network of tunnels filled with super mutants that are like cannibalizing humans. There's something about that juxtaposition that is, it's haunting, it's melancholy, it's disturbing, and then you whip out your chain gun and you start wiping out the mutants, right? But there's also a level of fear there because it's meant to be a dangerous world. So what I don't like about Amazon is, like typical Hollywood hacks, they have latched onto the one thing they love, which is the satire and the camp and the comedy. And they have exploded that to be the whole show. And of course they did. Because freaking of course they did. Because they're just like Rian Johnson. They're just like Dan and Dave of Game of Thrones. Their favorite thing is whatever subverts expectations. It's always their favorite thing. And they miss everything else because that's all they can focus on. So I could be wrong. It could be good. And I'm just off my rocker, but look at the evidence, ladies and gentlemen of the court. Look at the evidence we have behind us. I'm just saying, the odds aren't good. So anyway, so that's why your dear captain is going to host a Fallout tabletop RPG session using the Fate core system and the Fallout role-playing game as kind of the for the perks and the armor and weapons and all that cool stuff. And we'll see what we can do. We'll have some fun. So I hope you'll join us. And so we've had some fun talking about an actually good show written by adults. Mature, competent adults.
You can still have
that would be Shogun.
I couldn't even say adults. Wow. I was about to say adults writing fiction, but I can't even say adults. I don't know what that says about me. I don't know.
It's live, man. We're live on the internet, Redoubt. Yeah, you just gotta roll with it.
Beep, beep, boop, bop, beep.
Just gotta roll. It's funny, like I'm editing my clips and I see like that I was totally calling some character by the totally wrong name, and I know that character was not that name, but I didn't even hear it, because it's just live. Storm Crow wants to have an Iron Age discussion with Fu Man Blue about Evangelion. Fu Man, I gotta see what.
I have to go in there and mediate.
Storm Crow is like an Evangelion nut, and look, there's a lot to love in Evangelion. I'm not saying there isn't. I just didn't like the ending.
Which ending?
Endings are a big deal for me. It's a big deal for me.
I agree with you. Which ending for Evangelion? You got the original televised ending, you got End of Evangelion, and then you got whatever the rebuild films were about. Pick one. They're all very bad.
I need to get back into the Berserk manga, though, because I need an ending to that story. It's the epic, if there is an ending. I don't know if there is, but I would love to see Guts and Griffith finally have a showdown. So, well, we've had some. What is this blue-haired girl? What are you talking about, Fu Man?
He's talking about Evangelion.
Really? Okay. Oh, is that? Wait. She's like the android chick, isn't she? God, it's been so long since I saw that. She's like she's a clone or something.
Yes. She's a clone. A clone of 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 a clone. Okay, let's outro.
Yeah. All right. Well, we've had a great time. And Fu Man Blue, again, amazing with that. Did we spoil? We didn't spoil anything. What we did on Shogun.
Evangelion. No, he's talking about Evangelion.
Oh, you may have just spoiled something. Okay, well, we're sorry, Fu Man.
I
slipped out.
apologize. It's kind of
it slipped out. Okay,
it's kind of obvious.
It is. That's an oldie, but a good. I don't try to spoil things for anyone, but it just.
Well, she lacks any emotion, so you would presume she was a clone. Is that's how it should?
Yeah, pretty much. Just mum's the word on Evangelion from here on out. Well, sorry.
I can't help it. If the chat's providing me the ammunition, I'm going to return fire on that one.
And Fu Man Blue even sent us a super chat. No refunds. All sales are final. He's gonna claw back our super chat. I don't know, though, dude. I didn't spoil anything because I honestly don't know what the hell I'm talking about, Stormcrow, because I have not seen that since I was in high school.
I know a lot about Evangelion. It's horrifying.
Oh, Fu Man Blue. It was an accident, okay? It was an accident. You know,
hey, you don't know what version I'm referring to. The movie, the first ending, the second ending, the third ending, that
true.
one manga, that other manga, there's a zillion different mangas. There's an Evangelion verse, I swear. It's very weird.
Love you too, Fu Man Blue. We love all of our sailors and Stardust here on the Swords and Starships channel. This has been Captain Garrett, Redoubt Productions, a historian.
4 more episodes of Shogun coming!
Yeah, we're gonna do this again next week. You down for that?
Oh yeah.
All right. Cool.
As long as the sky doesn't fall.
Yeah, well, then we'll have a real life Fallout story. So, anything you want to plug for the audience?
If you like historical content, love exploring various facets of our shared past, go check out Redoubt Productions. We typically have a live stream Thursdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We will not have one this week. I'm taking the day off to enjoy the holiday. So we're going to take an extended vacation this week. But normally we have a live stream Thursdays, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And Saturdays, we tend to have a video uploaded. And if you want to listen to me talk about pop culture, you can go over to my other channel, the Heterochromia Podcast, where myself and my co-host, we talk about all sorts of crazy stuff. We just got done reviewing the Hunger Games trilogy. That was a thing that happened.
The books, right?
Yes, the books. And if you want to listen to me talk about Neon Genesis Evangelion all night, there's like 3-4 hours worth of it on there. So if that's what you're interested in, go check it out.
Sounds good. All right. Well, it's been a barn burner. And and also you can check out Blood and Oak on Amazon. That is my nautical novel.
Yes, behold.
Just check out And We Are Here, Swords and Starships on YouTube, Rumble, and X, formerly Twitter, and will continue to do. So this has been a Shogun review. We hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time. Until next time, I'll see you out there.